the vast and unknown depths of the ocean. How could there have been only one?
Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, nature's most terrifying creature takes on an all-new dimension in an all-new adventure. Man's deepest fear has risen again. This time, it's personal.
Someone said to me, I saw that Jaws 4. He said, it stinks. I said, I haven't seen it. I said, but I've seen the house it bought my mother, and it's marvellous.
Marvellous. Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike Muncer, and as ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. We are currently in the middle of our 10th season, exploring the evolution of nature biting back in horror, and this is part 11. In this week's episode, we are going to be looking at the Jaws sequels. That's Jaws 2 from 1978, Jaws 3D from 1983, and of course, Jaws The Revenge from 1987. And all three of these discussions will be spoilerific. So I guess I'll say go and give them all a watch before you listen to our discussion. So joining me for this very fun conversation, I'm very excited to have a great friend of the pod back with me. She is a comedian, she's a TV presenter, and she was last here in our Home Invasion series to discuss Us and Parasite with me, and she's back. Welcome, Susan Calman.
Thanks very much. Hello, how are you?
Oh, so good, Susan. I'm very excited. We've got some fun movies to discuss this week, right?
We do, and you said to me, what would I like to discuss in this season? And you had a lovely suggestion.
I suggested something quite like highbrow, prestigious, you know?
Yes, the thing is that last time I was on the podcast, I did Us and Parasite, right?
You've had your fill of prestige.
What I thought would be quite nice is if we just had some nice chats rather than, you know, because I love Hitchcock and I love all of these films, but part of the fun of horror to a certain extent, especially some of these nature and animal films is just quite good fun.
Yes.
And I could think of nothing more fun than Jaws 2, 3 and The Revenge.
Oh, and it's made me so happy that you've been quite excited about recording this and discussing these movies, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. And we did one a night, me and the wife.
Yep.
Now, what's very important, I don't really talk about her very much. She hates horror films.
Yep.
And so I often have to watch them, not in secret, but when she's upstairs working, I'll put one on downstairs, and I often have to watch them in broad daylight because I can't in the evening because she'll say I don't want to watch them.
Yeah.
And we went to a swap meet recently, and I had to secretly buy a Bride of Chucky doll and some Chucky accessories.
Amazing.
Which was all because I couldn't fit them in my rucksack, so she found out, but it was all fine. But I thought, no, what I'd like to do is I'd like, you know, her to watch these with me, so I have a different point of view, because I've seen these films many times.
Right.
And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was someone who didn't like these films, watched them and told me what she thought of them? So there's one of them, spoiler alert, where she sat stony-faced and swore a lot. I'll tell you which one that is, which is fair to say she hated. But they're very exciting films to watch. They are.
They are. And I love this. I mean, I'm the exact same. You know, my wife doesn't like horror, and so many of us. This seems to be a running trend with horror fans. We tend to be married to people that don't like horror so much, or our partners don't like horror so much. So there is this kind of having to find your window when your partner's gone to bed or something in order to watch these weird little movies from the 70s or 80s, right, when no one else is around, like it's a kind of dirty little secret. That tends to happen a lot.
Yes. And it's quite good, though, because that's why podcasts are so important. Because I put my headphones on and I wander around the house and she doesn't know what I'm listening to. Just mean, and I can pretend I'm listening to a history or politics podcast, and actually I'm listening to a podcast about serial killers or something. So it's a lovely secretive way of finding that joy.
I love it. Now, we talked about Home Invasion last year together. Dark, tricky, not the easiest things to watch in a lot of ways. Now we're doing something quite different. We're talking about movies that go back to nature, the great outdoors, animal attacks, this kind of thing. What are your general thoughts, Susan, on this kind of area of horror, this subgenre?
I think this is probably the area of horror I saw first, because being born in the 70s, there was a huge swathe of these kinds of films around that time. So The Swarm, Piranha, all of those ones. I distinctly remember one of the first horror films I ever saw. I've never been able to track it down. I think it was a made-for-TV film, and it was called Curse of the Black Widow. And it was a woman, and she had, I remember distinctly, a birthmark on her belly button. I think it might have been quite a saucy film. Which was the mark of the Black Widow, and she turned into a giant spider and ate men. And I always remember that and a number of those other films about that time as being potentially quite frightening. And this is the thing, we've talked about this before in horror. The most frightening things are the things that could potentially happen or are so out of your sphere of comfort that you don't know how you would deal with them.
Yeah.
And I think I went recently to an animal sanctuary in Ireland. All my stories start like this.
I know, I love it.
I went recently to an animal sanctuary. Because I do film all these television shows, I go to strange places. And there was a place that rescued bears.
Wow.
Right? And the bear was about 7 foot, 8 foot tall that they'd rescued.
Wow.
And I said, what would the bear do if you went in to the enclosure? And he said, he would just rip my face off. There were some wolves and the wolves were fine, but the bears no. And you do know that if you encountered a bear or something like that, I mean, really, there's not a lot. They give you advice on what to do if you see a bear, but really...
I mean, this advice too, right? I mean, I recently went to the US and we went through Yosemite and places, and there were these signs that sort of said, oh, by the way, bears and mountain lions have been spotted in this area. Already, yes. I was absolutely shitting myself. And then under the sign, it said, if you encounter one, don't run away. Like, hold your arms up in the air and like make a loud noise as if we're going to intimidate these things away. And I just thought to myself, I don't think I will do that. I think instinctively, my fight or flight will kick in and I will run. I will fly,
Because there is this theory that if you meet a wild animal, that if you act like you're not frightened, they'll be confused by it and not eat you. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Do you know what? I don't want to risk that. I don't think if I came face to face with a bear that I would try and intimidate it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't think so. And I think as well, though, because you're talking about going to America there, I think in Scotland particularly, there is one venomous snake. There's only the adder.
Yes.
And we occasionally get the odd basking shark, and the wild cats are here, but there's really nothing in nature apart from nature itself, the mountains and the weather, that could hurt you. So you can go out if you want to on a walk without thinking, gosh, I wonder if that's a bear.
Yeah.
But when you go to America, that is a valid question in part.
It's a valid question, right? And we stayed in this place in Death Valley in the middle of nowhere. And again, there were signs in the room, which I didn't care for, that just said, don't put your hands or feet inside anything without checking it first, i.e. your shoes, etc., right? Because of things like scorpions and stuff as well. And I am quite relieved we live in a country where that isn't a daily risk. Do you know what I mean?
It is, as you know, and this is quite interesting in terms of how my view on Jaws has changed in general. I do a show for Channel 5 called Cruising, where I cruise around the world.
Yeah. And
I'm about to start another series of that, and I am going to, as well as the Caribbean, Australia and New Zealand.
Ooh.
Now, there are sharks in Australia.
Everything in Australia wants to kill you, doesn't it?
That's the thing. And people keep saying, are you not excited about Australia? And I go, no, because everything I'm frightened of is there and potentially will they're not trying to kill me, but could kill me. There are spiders that kill you, there are snakes that kill you, and there are giant sharks that will kill you. And whilst I've stepped forward, when I was in Tahiti last year, I did go swimming with black-tipped reef sharks.
Wow.
Now, for me, that was a huge step forward.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're the size of goldfish and they're very friendly.
Okay.
Right? So it was fine and they just stay away. But the thing is, as we'll talk about, it's the great whites.
Yes.
And actually, there are other sharks which could potentially hurt you quite badly. But Australia's concerning me because I've got a wonderful producer called Jenny. And she's always trying to get me to... Oh, wouldn't it be great if you were in a cage, Susan?
Yeah.
With lots of...
Tell you what would make great television.
Yeah. And you'd be frightened, but you'd overcome a fear. And I go, but that's an awful thing to do. And I know at some point in the near future, we are going to have a discussion about me getting into a cage with great white sharks.
Oh, wow.
And
there'll be some TV production company form you'll have to sign that sort of says, if you do die...
No.
It's not our fault.
It's funny. I shot a cannon last week in Guernsey.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had to indemnify Guernsey in case I was injured. And I thought, well, okay. What a way to go.
What a way to go. A cannon in Guernsey.
It's cannon in Guernsey. So.
Incredible. So are you quite... Because I would have imagined, Susan, you are such a well-travelled person. I mean, it's what you do, really, right? And so, I thought Susan would be pretty brave when it comes to all of this kind of stuff.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible because the thing is, and it's a constant thing, television Susan Calman does lots of things.
Yes.
Real Susan Calman... sits on our sofa.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And in terms of the outdoors, growing up in Scotland, we went for lots of walks, mountain climbs, all those kind of things. And actually, it's COVID that's changed everything because when we were filming during COVID and you had to stay 2 meters apart and all of those things, the safest way to film anything was actually in the water. Because there's a reason why you're apart from each... Do you know what I mean? It didn't look as odd as some of the other COVID-y things did.
Yeah.
So I hadn't been in the sea probably since I was about 14, and then suddenly 2021, I was swimming in the sea all the time. And it's a strange thing to keep your job... to have to do. I'm glad I did. I'm much more confident than I was. But personally speaking, I really like my house. Yeah. And it's while I don't mind camping or any of those things. Like at the weekend, it was 25 degrees in Glasgow. My wife was in the garden and I said, can I just sit on the sofa?
Yes.
Can I just sit on the sofa? So I'm not the most outdoorsy person. I love it. But things like, of all the films that you're doing, one of the reasons why I don't like the great outdoors, and I think I've said this before, Picnic at Hanging Rock is to me... Yeah. I watched that probably when I was about the same age as the girls who are in the film. And I think that is the most disturbing example because you go out for the day and you never come back.
Yeah.
And I think that's always my concern. Because I catastrophize. Ask my therapist. I catastrophize. I'll go out for a walk and I'll never come back.
Never come back.
And all of the computers in the world and satellites will not locate me.
No.
And then everyone will think, did she mean to go out? Did something happen to her? Yeah. And so the great outdoors, probably more even than home invasion, frightened me because you could just disappear.
Yeah, I agree with that. I find it more frightening, I think, in reality. There's a certain element of control that we think we might have in a home invasion situation, right? Yeah. Oh, it could find a weapon in our house, or we know the layout of our house better than they do. Whereas I think, there's that absolute lack of control. If you're out in the wilderness or in the outback, I just wouldn't have a hope, It's like, what do you do?
So again, Australia. And if you have Australian listeners, I'm very much looking forward to visiting your country. Please don't think I'm not.
I know. I'm really worried this is going to be a very anti-Australian series.
It's not. No.
No.
But Wolf Creek, all of those, the vastness of Australia is terrifying.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It is terrifying.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same with America sometimes when I go to parts of America. It is terrifying.
Yeah.
The fact that you are so minute, so minuscule, and the forces of nature you could be gone in a second and that's it. So Australia really frightens me, I think, to be honest. And I'm sure I'm going to love it. I'm on a cruise ship. I'll be absolutely fine. But when you look at films like Wolf Creek and then Picnic at Hanging Rock, and I think it's also the spiritual nature of nature. Is there a force there that is controlling what happens?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and those movies do that so well, you know, Picnic at Hanging Rock, stuff like Wake in Fright as well, like these movies that are just incredible, kind of like, you know, the dangers aren't even from, you know, animals or whatever. It can just be the landscape itself, right? Is enough. It's incredible.
Because the thing about Picnic on Hanging Rock in particular is, was it the sun?
Right.
Was it losing control of themselves? Was it the passion? What was it? And I think if you've been out into Scottish countryside is absolutely wonderful and beautiful, and it's one of the only places I've ever been where I feel completely on my own because there isn't anyone else there. So there's no one there, and your phone doesn't work.
No.
So
no.
I find this quite a frightening genre, not just the animal attack one, but the nature part of it. I think is quite troubling.
Do you have a particular phobia in terms of animals bigger than others? Is it sharks? Is it spiders? Is it snakes?
Sharks, spiders. I also have a phobia of ticking clocks and raisins, but that's out with
raisins.
Real problem with raisins.
Amazing.
If I get a plain scone and it's got a raisin in it, then I'm physically sick. Interestingly, and I don't know whether it's because of the films that I watched when I was younger, most formative, and no disrespect to Anaconda, Curse of the Blood Orchid, I think it's called, isn't it? With Jennifer Lopez.
Yes.
Snakes don't really. I don't. They're, you know. I don't really have the biggest problem with them. Spiders and sharks, absolutely terrified of them.
Yeah.
Terrified. And my wife has to deal with the spiders in the house.
Right. Yeah.
I'm very brave.
Yeah.
But there was one the other day and I tapped out, as the kids would say. I tapped out.
You tapped out. Yeah.
I tapped out.
Yeah. There's nothing. I don't mind a spider. I'm usually okay at handling the spiders in our house.
Oh.
My wife is more scared of them than me. But I don't like it. The thing that does freak me out is when you feel one on you before you see it. Do you know what I mean? Like in bed or something. And you do that thing where you kind of like leap out and you're just sort of doing this kind of crazy jig on the floor, like just wondering where it's gone, you know?
There was a massive one in the house the other day. And what we're trying to do, because spiders are hugely important to the ecosystem, you see, is save them before the cats get to them.
Ah, yeah.
And I mean, that's the other thing that you have to remember is I'm surrounded by 7 animals.
Oh, wow.
Who would eat me. And I remember you've been talking to other guests about this. Those cats, if they weren't fed for 2 days, if I was dead, they'd be munching on me. They would be.
Yeah.
And you are constantly aware, I think even with domestic animals, because dogs or cats, they are still animals.
Yeah.
And when they get pissed off,
oh yeah,
those cats could do some serious damage to me. And it's a beautiful psychological standoff between a cat and their owner, especially as we look at each other and going, I mean, you could kill me, couldn't you?
This codependency that you have on each other.
But you want to come up onto my lap and we'll pretend everything's absolutely fine. So, spiders, but sharks, I have to say, is the real big one.
Interesting.
The big phobia.
Okay, yeah. Well, perfect for the topic we're about to discuss then. So we're going to talk specifically about the Jaws sequels. Last week, I covered Jaws in depth. But let me just briefly, before we get into the sequels, Susan, you know, it is for so many people, not just one of the greatest horror movies ever made, one of the greatest films ever made, period, right?
Yes.
Jaws, 1975. What are your kind of thoughts on this movie? What's your kind of history with that original film?
Much like most of the other films that terrify me, I watched them too young.
Yeah, of course.
But interestingly, we used to go on holiday every year for 4 weeks to a place called the Isle of Arran, which is off the west coast of Scotland. Most beautiful place in the world, in my view. There was no television, and there was a bookcase, and the novel was there, the Peter Benchley novel was there. So I actually read the novel before I saw the film. And it's quite a terrifying book, actually, in a way. But I remember watching the film, and my life has never been the same since that. Because after that, I was frightened of swimming pools, I was frightened of the sea, I was frightened of swimming in any way. I mean, it is the most gloriously effective film. It really is. And latterly in life, watching it and appreciating how it was shot and everything else, but fundamentally, when you first watch it, and I'm very lucky, I think. I watched lots of these horror films when they came out, basically.
Yeah.
Before imitators, before anything else. So I got the true experience. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were saying they wish that they could watch horror films, something like Psycho, without knowing about Psycho.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Without knowing and really experiencing it. Now, I got to watch a lot of these films before the internet, didn't know what was going to happen. And it's terrifying. I mean, it is absolutely terrifying. And so much has been written about it. So much has been said about why it is, because the shark didn't work, because everything else. Fundamentally, I think a horror film is anything that causes absolute deep psychological distress for the rest of your life, and that is Jaws.
Absolutely it is. And again, we talked about this, about how in some ways it's almost like the first half feels more like a traditional horror movie, and then the last act kind of feels more like this kind of swashbuckling Moby Dick adventure story almost, right? With the three guys on the orca. But it's such a traumatizing experience for so many people, for millions of people when they watch it for the first time, right? And the power of that film, I think, is the filmmaker, like Steven Spielberg, really. I mean, I think this is one of the things we'll talk about with the sequels, is that it does require a good director to pull off a thing like this, because one of the biggest challenges of these animal attack movies, right, is how do you create a realistic looking animal without using actual animals in your film, right? And that was the big problem with Jaws. That was the problem that Spielberg, I think, geniusly overcame in that movie. And, we've seen it to some successful, some less successful attempts since then in terms of creating a good, realistic shark, right? But I think he did an amazing job with that by just, the points of view, camera angles, the score, the John Williams score, obviously, and just the tension, the build-up. And I think you're right. When you don't know what you're expecting with that film, and in the first act, you see a little boy killed on screen in front of his parents on the beach, it's like, wow, anything could happen in this movie, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, when you kill a child, and that's when you go, oh shit, anything could happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you killed a child. Well, I think though Spielberg, and it's really interesting what you say about the swashbuckling element of it. Let's face it, that he loved that. I think Spielberg, he loves it. If you look at his other films, that's something he enjoys. I think what's fundamentally missing, and we'll go on to talk about it in specifically Jaws 2 though, is the relationship between the three guys on the boat.
Yes.
Because it's not just... Chief Brody's a really interesting character, not necessarily the most sympathetic guy, not necessarily the guy you're rooting for at its heart. But when you put him with the other two guys, suddenly you've got a team you're rooting for.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the issues, is trying to recreate that magic that happened on the Orca when they are trying to get Jaws in the first one. Because so much of Jaws doesn't have a shark in it.
No, you're so right. Actually, it's quite a long run time, and there's relatively little shark horror compared to, like you say, character work and people telling each other stories on the Orca or whatever it might be. Yeah, yeah.
And so, what Spielberg does very well, I think, is take characters into a situation and makes you care.
Yeah.
The point of Jaws is, I really wanted them to live.
Yes.
There are points in some of the sequels where I wanted everyone to die. So that's what Jaws does so brilliantly. And also the creation, and again, this is going back to, it was the first of its kind. The fear of sharks for me is you don't know when you're in the water what's underneath you.
Yeah.
Don't know what it is. And what Jaws does so superbly is the shark POV shot, the helplessness. That first part of Jaws, when the woman is being pulled along in the water, is utterly terrifying.
Terrifying, yeah.
And again, lots of films have done it since, but as someone who watched it right at the beginning, it is seared into my brain, that film. And it actually took me a good 15, 20 years before I could watch it again because it was so frightening.
Yeah.
And can you imagine many other films worldwide that if you go into the sea and someone hums the theme tune,
right,
everyone knows what you're talking about? It is so into the public consciousness worldwide. Unlike more than almost any other horror film.
Yeah,
I think.
can barely think of any. Actually, the only other comparison I can think of, which something we've already mentioned, is Psycho, right? Is people going...
Psycho, absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
That's
yeah.
kind of... But it's like
yeah.
that level, isn't it? Of like...
Absolutely.
You don't have to have seen... My 8-year-old nephew probably understands a Jaws reference, even though he won't have seen the film before, you know? It's like we're born with it at this point, you know?
And I think and it was discussed a lot, Peter Benchley, I think, discussed it a lot, how sad he was that the effect of Jaws was on how people viewed sharks.
Yeah.
Because it really just, I mean, it ruined sharks for everybody. It really did.
It did, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
When actually they are very beautiful creatures that are a vital part of the ecosystem and are not going to snarf on you if you just go for a paddle.
Yeah.
But the effect of it was enormous in terms of how people saw sharks.
And what is it about sharks, do you think? There is something about them that it does strike fear into us. Is it the teeth? Is it the, there's something about them clearly taps into something instinctual in all of us human beings, doesn't it? Where we think, no, we should not be near these things, you know?
I think you don't see them when they attack, potentially.
Yeah.
Michael Myers, Jason, will walk very slowly towards me with a large knife.
Yes.
Right? They don't really jump out necessarily a lot. They like to be seen. I won't see the shark. There's nothing I can do about the shark. I mean, there's nothing. I could try and punch it in the nose. I think that's what they say, or gouge it. I mean, you're not going to punch a shark in the nose.
No.
Hugely fast.
Yes.
And basically, if it nicks me at any part of my body, I'm going to bleed to death.
Yes.
Yes. It doesn't even need to eat me.
Yeah.
To cause my death. And it is that helplessness of, I cannot swim as fast as a shark and I have no chance. It's the inevitability of death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also not knowing about it.
Yeah.
As I say, you don't know it's coming.
I think you're absolutely right. It's that blanket of the ocean and you don't know what's under it at any given point, right? And there's this big toothy thing that can chomp down on you and move much faster than you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's no wonder we're all terrified of it, really, right? So, obviously, Jaws was a huge hit, kind of regarded as one of the first ever blockbuster movies, right? So it kind of goes without saying that we got a sequel a couple of years later, although actually, in some regards, sequels were still a relatively new thing at this point. Like, I don't think it was really until about this point in time, the late 70s into the early 80s, when it was a given, right, that any successful movie would probably get given a sequel. So I think this was kind of, in some ways, a kind of a fairly new idea. Bring back Jaws, bring back these characters. And so, in 1978, we get Jaws 2.
Jaws 2. The terror continues.
In all the vast and unknown depths of the ocean, how could there have been only one?
So, it's not that long after the events of Jaws, but Amity has moved on fairly quickly, it would appear. Not necessarily Chief Brody, but Amity itself has moved on. A hotel is being built, everyone's having a lovely summer. Chief Brody thinks that there's another shark. No one believes him. They discover there is, in fact, another shark.
Yes.
We'll go into details. And, I mean, the culmination really is his two children are sailing in this flotilla and he has to go and rescue them. It's a very simple thing.
Yeah.
He thinks there's a shark. No one believes him. There is a shark. He has to kill it.
Yeah.
So in that way, sort of the same as the first film, but with some quite important differences.
Yeah, it is relatively... It's doing that sequel thing, isn't it? Of kind of like, what did we like about the first one? Let's have that again, but more so, right? It kind of very much feels like that. What do you think of this movie? And what's your kind of early memories of seeing this one for the first time, Susan?
I mean, I would have seen this one probably VHS again, down to Azad Video. Mum and Dad would have got it, sat round.
Yeah.
At that point, I would have had no knowledge or actual interest in what the sequel meant, you know. And I think it's really interesting to... Jaws 2 is a really interesting film to think about in terms of sequels.
Yeah.
What do you want from a sequel? Mm-hmm. Do you want a film that's a conversation with the first one? Do you want one that develops the characters? What is it you... Because people criticise these three films for various reasons, but the question is, what are you wanting from this film?
Yeah.
Now, Aliens is a perfect example. After Alien, I really wanted to know what happened to Ripley. I really did.
Yeah.
Because she was such an incredible character. I loved Aliens because it told me more about her.
Yes.
It also told me more about the alien, although that wasn't really exactly... I'm interested in Weyland-Yutani, of course I am. There's no problem at all. But when you get into sequels, I'm not sure I want to know an awful lot about Michael Myers or Jason and what makes them tick, because that makes them less frightening. I don't want to, you know. And so when you get into these Jaws sequels where we're trying to find out more about the shark's motivations, that's when it goes wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm fine knowing about the Brody family in Jaws 2, because that makes sense. So for me, I think it's a successful sequel.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah, I think so.
it is.
I think so. I think there is elements of it that feel... I think I can feel that it's not directed by somebody who is as good as Steven Spielberg, right? And I think because it is set in the same place with a very similar story, with very similar characters, you can't help but kind of almost do this side-by-side comparison in your head to Spielberg's original and think, oh, it's a bit of a pale comparison at times. But it's still very fun. And I think particularly the final act, when we get to all of the teens, you know, stranded on the boats being attacked, I think that's when it gets really, really fun.
Yes.
I do think that it takes a little bit of a while to get there. This movie is 116 minutes. Yeah. Could it have just been 90 minutes, I think? I feel like it could have been, you know?
No, it could be. What it's suffering from, though, I think, is... that requirement to fill in the gaps of what's happened to the family, the dynamics of the family, because it's focusing on the Brody family. Well, there was this incredibly traumatic thing that happened. How are they all dealing with it?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And then you've got odd subplots about, as I say, the hotel opening and the mayor and the property developer who fancies Chief Brody's wife. And there are lots of kind of slightly soap opera type elements in it.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Which makes it feel slightly less classy than the original, you know.
Yeah.
There are some incredibly effective moments in it. The director has created some very effective set pieces in it. It just doesn't quite have that class of Spielberg. And also, and this is what I was saying before, when Chief Brody is on his own, he's not necessarily the most sympathetic of characters. And he's a deeply traumatizing event in Jaws.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, he's not over it.
No.
And he's really struggling, which makes him even more unsympathetic in a way. So where you don't have the other characters to buddy along with him and take off those rough edges. And I think one of the issues is it is just him going after the shark. Yeah. On the slowest moving police boat.
Oh. Takes so long to get there.
He's on a really slow boat and he doesn't know where anything is. You keep saying, I don't know where that is. Yeah. You think that's not good. So I think it's actually a very enjoyable film. And it's not as good as the first one.
No.
But it is still a really good film, I think.
It's got some really fun set pieces, I think, for sure. So this one directed by, now, how do I pronounce it? Jeannot Schwartz. I don't know.
That sounds absolutely right to me.
Yeah, let's go with that. I think, and again, this movie had production issues, just like the first one, right? That they had an initial director attached to this movie, John Hancock. Then he was kicked off the project because he just wasn't sort of up to scratch when it came to directing the big action sort of sequences. The new director didn't get on with Roy Scheider to the point where apparently they actually had a fight on set, a physical fight. Roy Scheider kind of only agreed to do it for sort of contractual reasons, I think, right? So, and I wonder if that comes across a little bit. I'm not saying Roy Scheider's performance is bad in this, but like you said, his character alone in this story, it's lost a bit of warmth or humanity or something, and I wonder if that is also coming through in the fact that Roy Scheider doesn't really want to be there and he's just sort of contractually obliged. I don't know, there's a lack of warmth, I think, in this movie in some ways.
Yes, I mean, it's difficult to separate yourself from knowing the story of how he didn't really want to do it.
Yeah.
And watching the performance. It is quite difficult because
Yeah.
everyone knows he didn't really want to do it at all. But I think you can see that. Mm-hmm. I think the problem is the family dynamic with Ellen.
Yes.
Brody,
who we'll talk about again in another movie.
We will talk about it again. But when you look at all aspects of his life, the mayor doesn't like him, the property developer doesn't like him, his family don't seem to like him an awful lot. He's sitting with his shirt off, putting some cyanide into some bullets. Do you know what I mean? Which I love that scene. I mean, that man has lost his mind.
He's
putting cyanide into bullets and putting wax on top of them. And
my favourite bit is when his little youngest son, Sean, is picking up the bullets for him off the beach, the cyanide bullet. He's just letting his little boy collect these.
I put that in my notes and double-starred it. Those are cyanide bullets.
Yes. Questionable parenting going on here.
And so he has lost it, and then he gets fired, and he has. And what's really interesting, though, again, and I know the mayor is meant to be this terrible character, is no one knows exactly what they went through.
No. On
the Orca, trying to kill the shark. Mm. And knowing Chief Brody the way I know Chief Brody, I know men like Chief Brody.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll have talked about it a lot.
Absolutely. No.
So there's a reason why everyone seems to have moved on, because he's gone, it was pretty bad and the boat sank and we got the shark, and everyone's gone, oh, you're all right then.
Yeah.
Right?
Everything's fine.
So
everything's
fine.
Yeah.
And Amity, it's actually, I think, Jaws 2 and 3, to a certain extent, are films about corporate greed.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They're films about the lack of public safety to make some money. There are some, in terms of the direction, there are some moments of which are really, I find funny. The woman in the boat who pours petrol over herself.
It's just in a panic, just pours it all over herself.
It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And the problem with that sequence is, it's directed really well. The fin, as the woman is water skiing, the fin approach is really, really great.
It's great. I
Brilliant.
think this might be the best that the shark looks in all 4 movies, maybe, this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So she's water skiing, the fin's approaching. It is real, oh shit, it's coming. She gets eaten by the shark, and the mother, just pours petrol on herself and then sets fire to herself. And the problem is, and it happens quite a lot in this film, there's a lot of great build-up, and then the shark does something or appears and it kind of ruins it. Although the shark is slightly burned and looks quite badass for the rest of the film. I mean, it's quite...
Oh, yeah, like a little Scarface sort of
delightful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think for me, they pair Chief Brody with a slightly daft deputy, which reminded me very much of, Scream.
Yes. Deputy Dewey, yeah.
Deputy Dewey. So he doesn't really have anybody, Chief Brody, to talk to. And I enjoyed the fact that he put in a call to Richard Dreyfuss, and he's in Antarctica. So they explain it away by saying he's in Antarctica. So
when actually Richard Dreyfuss said no to this, didn't want to be involved if Spielberg wasn't involved, apparently.
So I still think the direction is absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. The theme that runs through all 3 of these films for me, and it's the same actually with the first one, is the shark is more terrifying when you don't see it.
Always, yes.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
And the problem is that these sequels do show the shark more and more and more, right? And I think, again, Spielberg, such a brilliant director, knew that if this shark wasn't going to look realistic enough, we've got to find other ways to make these set pieces work. Whereas, yeah, these movies, they don't care so much about that, do they? They're just going to show this shark just kind of like barreling into boats head first and stuff. And again, it just kind of looks like a giant log or something.
There's a lot of nose action. There's lots of bumping.
Yeah.
What I would say in slight defence, I think, because I do love these films, of it is having filmed not in any way to this extent on water, it is tremendously difficult.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
So I remember I was canoeing once and there was a safety boat and the safety boat couldn't get to me actually because of everything is more difficult.
Yeah.
It is more awkward for the actors. It's more awkward for all of the team. There's salt water going everywhere. So the fact that they managed, especially as you say, towards the end of it, the set piece at the end, which is pretty good. But that would have been challenging to film.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the set pieces are fun. I think they're pulled off really well. And again, that debate that never ends of is Jaws a horror movie or not? I think no one can deny that Jaws 2 is a horror movie, right? I think it is. It's interesting because it came out the same year as Halloween, I believe a few months earlier than Halloween. But it feels like it's going for a kind of teen slasher vibe, doesn't it? And it's sort of before the teen slashers became a thing. But the whole second half of this movie where you just got countless teenagers having fun on the beach, in the sea, getting picked off one by one, it really feels like we're in a kind of slasher movie, doesn't it, I think?
I mean, it does in the setup of the teens.
Yeah.
They're slightly horny kids who want to go out and drink beer and make out with each other.
Yes.
And we're introduced to them in turn. One of them's slightly lonely but is desperate. I mean, it is a summer camp on water, essentially. And these are the camp counsellors, if you will. So, obviously there's Mike Brodie, which is the older son, and then little Sean, who annoyingly decides to come along.
Yeah.
And it is. And I have to say, there's one moment, the most effective moment for me, and honestly, I got so upset. Sean has snuck onto the boat, and after the sharky bump, people are in the water. And there's one, and I didn't note down her name. I apologise.
I think I know who you're talking about. Is it Marge? Is it
in the sail? She's in like a Sailor City type thing.
Yes.
And she tries to save Sean.
Yeah.
And the shark eats her.
Yes.
And honestly,
it's really sad. Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yes.
Because the rest of them are all cowering, and she decides to go and save the kid, and she gets snarfed down by the shark.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that was pretty effective.
Really effective. Actually. Goes back to like what you were saying about how we need to sort of care about what's happening, right? To be invested. And you do. In that moment, everyone is sad for Marge. It is a sad moment. Yeah.
Marge was a hero.
Yes.
R.I.P. Marge.
R.I.P. Marge.
R.I.P. Marge. So, I mean, they're being stalked. Now, what's quite interesting is, in Jaws 2, at one point, Chief Brodie does posit the theory, do sharks send messages to each other?
I love that, yeah.
There is a point where Chief Brodie goes, hang on a second.
Yes.
Is this shark being sent from my family?
Yes. This idea, because this is a real thing with certain animals, right? Apparently, if you kill a wasp, other wasps can kind of follow its scent and come and get you, which is terrifying. And he kind of flags this idea, and I think somebody else dismisses it. And, the woman says to him, sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brodie, which...
Well, you're wrong there.
Part 4 begs to differ, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but it's interesting because what they're also trying to do in this film is give a reason for this.
Yes.
Because why would a shark... I love these films. You end up asking yourself questions that really... Why would a shark spend its time following those boats?
Yes.
Tapping them all into the sea. He's toying with them, the shark. Because the shark could snarf any of them down at any point.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? The point where Chief Brodie is shooting the cyanide bullets into the sea.
Yeah.
And he's surrounded by distressed children and crying people. And then they have a wonderful POV shark shot, as if the shark's off the shore, having a snigger and twirling its moustache. Do you know what I mean? This film actually does posit the theory that the shark knows what it's doing to a certain extent, because it's after those boats.
Totally. This is the other thing, right? By the time we get to the sequels, this isn't just an animal anymore. Like, this is an actual monster, right? You know, the shark has become a real villain of a character. Like you say, it toys with its victims. It stalks its victims. There is something like premeditated about everything that the sharks do from this sequel onwards, isn't there? I think, which is fun. Again, it kind of leans into that horror genre kind of monster movie side even more so. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think this is where the teen slasher thing comes in, though, because what it's trying to do is to not make it the mindless killer.
Yeah.
Which is potentially what a shark is. I'm not a shark expert. I should have said that up front. But as far as I'm aware, sharks don't necessarily, have psychic abilities. But I may be wrong. But what it's trying to do in order to make the film work is to say, no, much like Michael Myers or Jason, this shark knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
So there's no escape because it's going to come after you. What's interesting, though, is it's probably after Chief Brody, because there's one point where Mike is floating unconscious in the water. The shark could have easily just eaten, but doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not just doing what it's doing for food at this point, is it? I think, No.
And often just takes a wee nibble and doesn't eat the whole thing as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think it is really interesting, because I saw it was 78 as well, which of course, Halloween, etc. It is, you've got a group of kids who are in it far more actually than Chief Brody is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Who you're following, who are trying to survive, who are improvising away. They're trying to get to this kind of electricity substation to get there. And so I did root for them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I did.
They're all quite sweet, and, I think that, again, that sense of character. I mean, I have questions as to why the mayor is still the mayor in this movie. What's he still doing in this town?
It's corruption, isn't it? It's American corruption. That's what's going on. Yeah.
Also, was it just me, or Mike Brody, we'll talk about Mike and Sean throughout this whole trilogy of films, right? They are the one constant throughout all the sequels, but they're very inconsistent too in terms of the age of them, who plays them, what they do.
Oh, absolutely.
I was confused as to how old Mike Brody is in this movie compared to him being a child 3 years earlier.
What's lovely is, in Jaws 2, Mike is 25 years older than his brother.
Yes.
And then in Jaws 3, Sean looks like he's 15 years older than Mike.
Yes.
And then in Jaws 4...
he's a child again.
Everything's gone wrong. He's like 18 again. So consistency in terms of the children and their trauma and how they react to things is completely different. Because in this one, Mike's maybe, 15, 16? Maybe, because he's still at school.
Yes. Although he looks, as is often the way with teen movies, he looks like he's played by a 21-year-old.
No question at all. No question at all. All of them are played by 35-years-olds who've worked on the New York stage and have finally got a job.
Absolutely.
And Sean looks about 5.
Yeah.
I thought actually the scenes with Sean were really interesting when he was clinging onto the boat.
Yeah.
I thought he did a grand job,
he
actually.
Was great.
The child
really
actor,
good.
because some of the best parts of it where you didn't know if the shark was there or not. There's only 10 meters. Can you swim 10 meters?
Yeah.
Do you have the guts to swim?
It's good.
And my wife and I talked about this, because just before they got to the substation, Lee said, I'd make a go of that. I'd make a swim for that.
Yeah.
And I said, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you watch it and you think, there are people who would say, I'm going to take my chances, and there are people who wouldn't. And I wouldn't, personally.
One of the things that's really fun about these nature films, I think, is that you say to yourself, what would I do in this situation, right? How would I survive this? Would I think up something better than these characters or not? Usually not for me, I think. But yeah, I like to think I would give that a go at swimming that.
I absolutely wouldn't. I absolutely would not. Or I would let... Now, this is a really bad omission. So... when we were just getting together, my wife and I watched a film called Open Water. Do you remember Open Water?
Yes,
right.
I never got over Open Water.
So quite early on in the relationship, I think you're still meant to pretend. And I said, what would happen if we were in a similar situation?
Yeah.
And she said really quickly, I'd nick a vein and push you away. And I was like, right.
Incredible.
So I think what I would do is let her swim as a distraction. And
Yes, perfect.
She actually said to me on Saturday night, we were having a drink on Saturday night and we were talking about Titanic for some reason. Not the movie, the actual one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we were talking about how men were meant to be brave and dress in their dinner suits and not get in the lifeboats.
Yeah.
And my friend Roger said I would dress in a dinner suit and I would salute as the ladies. And I was like, okay. And Lee said, and I do the same. And I went, but I'll be in a lifeboat. And she said, yeah, well, you'll be all right. And I was like, you're gonna... You know that it's 22 years and you're still finding out she wouldn't come in a lifeboat with me. So anyway,
this is amazing.
She'd nick a vein and let me float away as bait.
Incredible.
Is essentially
Don't go to sea with your wife, by the sounds
Oh
of it.
no, I'm not.
Good idea.
That's why I go on a cruise myself, quite frankly. So.
Yeah. Oh, this is amazing. And it has got some great set pieces. I love I actually jumped at the moment when it attacks the helicopter. Just like leaps out of the water
Yes.
as well, drags the helicopter
I mean,
down.
that's an incredible thing, because actually the director lets it go on for a long time. And even when you know that the helicopter thing is coming, it's still a tremendous scare. I think there's a lovely moment where Chief Brodie doesn't even want to paddle in the sea to retrieve a piece of wood.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that shows
stuff's great.
Those little moments, I think, are really, really well done.
And those little, like, near-miss moments. Like, I love the sequence when Mike he's sort of, what is he, sort of kiteboarding or something? And he's kind of like bobbing up and down in the water. And it's quite a prolonged sequence, isn't it? And obviously we get the POV, we get the John Williams score, we get the dangling legs, and that stuff, that's the best stuff, I think, isn't it, when it does that?
But absolutely. And that's where, in a way, it's the underwater camera shots, the shark POVs, which are the most effective, because
always.
Again, they're trying to persuade me to do that paragliding nonsense when I'm on a cruise.
God.
After rewatching this, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not doing it. So
just being dunked like a tea bag into the water. Like,
see if something happens to me. I think, look, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cracking watch.
Really fun. I also love, just to wrap up, I also love how they defeat the shark at the end of each movie and what ways they come up with. And for this one, it was biting the electrical cables, right?
Absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely. He's banging on. And I mean, again, it's quite clunky in a way, the foreshadowing of pulling up the electric cable. Everyone keeps talking about electricity substations in case you hadn't got it, in case you hadn't worked out what was about to happen.
Yeah.
But that's where Chief Brodie very bravely saving his kids and the other kids, goes for it.
Yeah.
The actual, it was 1978. The actual shark fire is perhaps a slight letdown.
So funny.
But
yeah.
I think that was a very fitting ending to the film.
For sure.
So I enjoyed it a lot. I was glad I rewatched it. My wife enjoyed it. That's one of the last times she said those words in this rewatch.
Yep.
She was very pleased with it.
So, and the movie did well. I think audiences loved it. It was on a $20 million budget. It made over $200 million. So it was a big hit, this movie.
Yeah.
And I think, generally kind of mixed to favourable reviews for this one. And I think over time, maybe because of part 3 and 4, I think over time this movie has become even more appreciated as one of the better kind of horror sequels out there, right?
Absolutely. And I think it stands up.
Yes. Yeah.
What's really good about it is there's no technology to date it.
No.
And that's why sometimes I think these nature films still stand up, because it's us against whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you're not either laser guns up to speed or the computers. It's timeless in a way.
Yeah.
Because if you were out at sea just now and there was a shark, it's exactly the same now as it was in 1978.
Totally. The only thing that the technology involved in the production dates, like how they do the shark. But other than that, you're absolutely right.
Yes, absolutely. So the human fear stays the same.
Hello, everybody. Before we get to Jaws 3 and Jaws 4, just going to take a moment to thank our next 30 Kickstarter backers for supporting Final Cut, the official Evolution of Horror card game. Since we went on sale last week, the games have been flying off the shelf. A huge thank you to everybody who has been purchasing the game. We dispatched another couple of 100 games this week, and there are still some left remaining. But if you want to grab your game, get in there quickly before we sell out. Just head to evolutionofhorror.com/shop. But I want to thank our next 30 Kickstarter backers for helping this game exist in the first place. A big thank you to Mal Jutley, Niels Jacobson Harpeth, Bronte Schiltz, Lucy Roche, Whitney Lynn, Brett McKenzie, Lily May, Sarah, Charlotte Armstrong, Claire Vaughan, Alex Sestock, Claire, Melissa Lynn, Alessandro Mariscalco, Great Jameson, David W. Cross, Kate Dunn, Giovanni Adili, Anna Rafferty, Jennifer Curtis, Liz Gage, Program Alice, Asha Chan, Ian O'Toole, Laura Almazara, Chris Phelps, Kathleen McCarthy, Heidi, David Postiadlo, and Jamie Cosmin. A huge thank you to all of those people for helping to support our Kickstarter campaign and help make Final Cut happen. And one more time, if you want to purchase your copy of Final Cut, the official Evolution of Horror card game, then head over to our online store, evolutionofhorror.com/shop. Okay, let's return to the second half of this week's episode as Susan Calman and I jump forward 5 years to discuss Jaws 3D from 1983.
A creature alive today has survived millions of years of evolution. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine that will attack and devour anything. One terrified you like nothing you have ever experienced when it captured your imagination and tapped your fear like no movie before it. Then, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, two continued the legend and spread the fear. Next summer, nature's most terrifying creature takes on an all-new dimension in an all-new adventure. And for the first time, the terror of Jaws will not stop at the edge of the screen.
Susan, Jaws 3D from 1983. Now, come on.
Come on now.
Just to say as well, Jaws 2 I had seen before. These next two were first-time watches for me.
You shut your face.
I had never seen Jaws 3 and 4.
Oh, well,
ever.
then I am so looking forward.
So, let's talk about Jaws 3, or Jaws 3D, of course, right?
Yes.
From 1983. What a weird film. Tell us a little bit about this one, Susan.
So, I mean, I think a lot of people will know the history of this film because they wanted to make another Jaws.
Yeah.
And there was a suggestion it was going to be a comedy film, National Lampoon's Jaws 3 People Zero. I mean, it had a fairly difficult kind of production history. And in the end, they've just gone for a Jaws film.
Yeah.
But because, and we'll talk about this, 3D was really coming back in, they've decided to make it Jaws 3D, which it really makes things quite problematic as you watch it now. Now, I'm going to make a lot of fun of this film.
Yes.
Now, no disrespect to anyone who loves it.
No, I mean, and it's quite an enjoyable watch in a lot of ways, you know.
One of the things I want to make very clear, and one of the things which I think is deeply problematic about this film, watching it now in 2024, is its setting.
Yeah.
Now, I have seen Blackfish. If you've not seen Blackfish, highly recommend it. Mm-hmm. I think it makes the film deeply problematic for me.
Yeah.
Watching it. So what I wanted to say, first up, I know before people send me messages that this film is set somewhere that is really not great.
Yeah.
And I think from a modern view, to watch the film, knowing what I think we know now regarding places like SeaWorld, makes it really quite tricky.
Well, absolutely. And especially because the movie isn't commenting on SeaWorld and its treatment of animals, really. I mean, there might be a bit of satire in there you could find if you really looked for it, I think. But really, it's like a big old advert for SeaWorld, isn't it, I think?
It is. I mean, I don't understand why SeaWorld allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
Because nobody in this film comes off positively. As on a very basic, my wife said two things. Number one, it's not very well constructed because everything kept falling apart. And number two, she was rooting for the shark from very early on. There's no question.
Absolutely.
And I think nobody comes out of this in a SeaWorld. I mean, you can't imagine anyone now allowing a film to be made with a genuine company on it.
That's what's so mad, isn't it?
The deaths of employees, guests being trapped underwater.
It's amazing. I mean, I would love to see a Disneyland set horror movie
that would be
in
amazing.
Disneyland about Disneyland, but it would never in a million years happen,
Never.
would it? That's the thing.
But this is the point where, again, thinking about people who are slightly younger won't understand. Places like SeaWorld were huge at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People's attitudes have changed towards a lot of things. And nobody, very few people, I should say, who were booking to see SeaWorld were even thinking about whether or not the orcas were in pain, whether or not this was an appropriate thing to do. This is something that's happened quite latterly. So when they're making this film, it's not a problem. Oh, look at the lovely dolphins.
Yeah.
Look at the funny tricks they do. But with modern eyes... I mean, Blackfish, I found Blackfish one of the most affecting things I've ever seen.
It's incredible. And again, for people who don't know, I'm sure everyone does, but it was a documentary that basically exposed, right, just the horrendous treatment of the animals and exploitation of the animals in those sorts of places, right, in SeaWorld. And
yes, and I mean, one of the greatest moments of my life was when I was in Antarctica. And I saw orcas in the wild. I mean, really, there was about 40 orcas swimming in the wild.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it was one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen to see them, So I think I just want people to know that while I'm about to make a deep, deep, deep dive into how much fun this is, it is an uncomfortable watch.
It is.
I think.
It is.
Because of the setting. And now the only good thing about it is you don't really see a lot of the animals. You see the couple of trained dolphins. There's an orca. Because actually for a SeaWorld, it seems to focus majoritatively on water skiing acrobatics.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. There's a lot of that going on.
There was one moment. There's a kind of a Western-themed cowboy dance show with water skiing. Now, get rid of the animals. I'll come and see that. I'll just come and see humans water skiing in cowboy outfits.
Yeah.
That's enough for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
So the other thing that it does, which is we'll talk about it, it's a really curious film. There are endangered coral reefs that pop up. I mean, it's a very difficult film.
Yes, agreed.
Do you know what I mean?
Agreed. It's that very kind of 80s corporate kind of nightmare of a film in a lot of ways, isn't it, I think?
Yes, and I mean, so we start, in case people haven't seen it, and really, 2 thumbs up from me, you really must see this film. We're about to make a lot of fun of it, but honestly, it's something that has to be seen to be believed.
Yes, for sure.
Basically, there's a soft open of a new SeaWorld. A family and friends week, as they call it.
Yeah.
Which I very much enjoy.
Yeah.
Family and friends week. Some people are doing acrobatic water skiing. That happens a lot. It's the best part of the film.
Yes.
They come in to a lagoon. They've made a lagoon. The 2 selling points of the SeaWorld are the lagoon and the undersea kingdom. They're the 2 big main. It's amazing. As the water skiers are coming in, the shark, when you're in a restaurant and you have to go to the toilet and you have to scooch behind someone's chair.
Yes.
The shark scooches in the gate and is in the lagoon. No one notices.
Yeah.
It's a deep undercover shark. Now, in this film, not a great deal happens in this film. What you need to know is there is a shark, winks at the camera. There is a shark in the lagoon.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
That's the starting point for Jaws 3D.
That's it. A shark on the loose inside a water park, essentially, right?
Which in itself is a great idea.
Yeah, quite fun. Yeah, it's almost like a kind of Jurassic World type setup, isn't it? You know,
absolutely.
Yeah,
you've got humans paying a lot of money to have a lot of fun in a water park. Oops, there's a shark. That's a great idea.
Yes.
You know, so the odd thing is the premise of the film, and some of the things in the film are really great ideas. They're just really quite badly done.
Yes, it's not great, this movie, is it? And I think as well the way this film looks compared to even the previous two is so kind of clunky. Why is it me, or did everything look like it was out of focus as well, like kind of blurry? And I didn't know if that was like to do with just the way that I was watching it. I had streamed it on I think Prime Video, or it was because of the 3D, maybe, like the way they were shooting it through 3D cameras. I don't know, but everything looked a bit blurry and kind of grainy.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think one of the issues, if you watch it, Jaws 2, I think stands up. I don't know if it's 3D filming. I'm not an expert in that. There were a lot of static 4 shots and 2 shots.
Yes,
where people would pop in and out of the side of the frames.
Yeah,
which means that it's quite a dull film.
Yes.
Just in terms of the visuals, because all you're doing is watching. It's like I've set up my phone and I'm filming something. So whereas Jaws 2 and Jaws the Revenge actually look like quite good films, this doesn't look like a good film.
No. And
it may be the impact of the 3D. It looks quite cheap.
It does. It definitely does, yeah.
And I think the directing, it's very oddly paced.
Very odd. Just like, again, it doesn't have that kind of momentum or build-up or dread or tension, does it, in the same way that the previous two do? Yeah.
There are some people who are acting very, very well. And then there's some people from another film it would appear, who are acting at a different level.
All the British people in it as well. Very odd. There's that guy who keeps going, "Come on, governor," like the whole time. It's very
I thought he was South African.
Yeah.
I thought he was South African. Because, so you've got Mike Brodie, played by Dennis Quaid.
Yes. Who's a full adult now at this point. It's only 8 years after Jaws 1, we should point out, you know.
Absolutely. So Mike Brodie is an engineer.
Yeah.
He's there with his girlfriend, who is a marine biologist.
Yes.
Of some sort. His brother Sean visits. Sean is wearing a cowboy hat and appears to be Texan.
Sean is now an adult Texan cowboy.
Absolutely. Right?
Yep.
Who is very flirty with a very young Leah Thompson.
Yes. Lorraine McFly, right? I think this was her first ever role.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we've got some other bits and pieces. We've got some other people there. Now, one of the problems is I actually thought Dennis Quaid was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty good in this.
He's good.
And I thought the girlfriend was pretty good. I don't really care about them, whether or not they go to Venezuela or not,
No.
which seems to be quite a plot point
Absolutely.
I didn't care about.
Yeah. Again, there's that kind of soap opera element, isn't there, I
Yes.
think? Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. And a slightly odd man who dies first, who's in charge of the gates, whose girlfriend's really angry. Look, there's a lot going on.
Yes. Yes, and a lot of random characters that they just sort of chuck in that don't necessarily need to be there, right? I think, you know?
Absolutely. And you can't necessarily work out. So Calvin Bouchard, was that his name? The head of the C Word,
Yes.
Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah.
I couldn't work out whether he was a nice man or not a nice man.
Yeah.
As well. I couldn't decide.
Yeah, same. I don't think the
Whether or
film can
not-
quite decide, can it?
No.
I think, you know, again, whether it wants to be this comment on kind of corporate greed and that kind of thing, or whether it just wants to be a big advert for SeaWorld, I think, as well, you know?
And then I think one of the major problems is, so someone's died. No one's noticed yet, really. They obviously needed more kills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because actually nothing much happens.
No, there are
film.
less kills in this one than Jaws 2. I think there are 5 victims altogether in this movie.
Yes.
There were 7 in Jaws 2. And yeah, there is big chunks of time when not a lot of is happening,
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
So randomly, 2 guys appear with a dinghy to go to the lagoon.
Yes.
Right? I mean, this is literally, if you watch the film, stuff's happening, and then suddenly these 2 guys,
Yeah, just for no reason.
comedically blow up a dinghy. And what's happening is, this is where we get the thing about there's a rare coral reef that they're going to try and steal because human beings are awful.
Yes.
And they get snarfed down by the shark.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. It's the classic...
We don't know any more about them. We don't know who they are.
No, it's the classic kind of, we're in 1983 now. We are very much in the midst of that big slasher boom, right? And it does feel more akin to that. Let's just throw in some random characters who are not very nice, who are doing something immoral, and they're going to get punished for it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's almost confusing as well, because one of the things they do a lot is they do a lot of trying to catch the shark at night.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why they felt the need, because it was the park's not open. Remember, it's the soft opening for family and friends.
Yeah.
Remember?
Soft opening, yeah.
Soft opening for family and friends. But they wait until the dead of night.
Yes, and also, because this is the other thing about the other three movies, is that they are 90% of them are set in the daytime, right? That's another thing that makes them quite unique for horror films in a way. And obviously, because they are shot on location, 1 and 2 were actually shot in, I think it's Martha's Vineyard and places like that, right? And off the Gulf of Mexico to shoot the water scenes. And obviously they wanted to film it all in the daytime. And this movie, again, visually stands out from the others, doesn't it? In that it's very dark and murky.
Very dark.
Yeah.
It's very dark a lot of the time. And the special effects are terrible.
It's dreadful.
I mean, the film opens with a fish head with the mouth still moving, slowly moving towards you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I did not see this in 3D at the cinema. I don't know. That might have been the most remarkable thing that the audience had ever seen.
Incredible, right? I wish I had been around for this, these kind of like old school 80s 3D movies that came out around this time. We had a Friday the 13th in 3D. We had an Amityville in 3D. It was a real boom of them at this time, wasn't there? And they were the old school kind of like red and green glasses, I think.
I remember going to see, I can't remember which Freddy it was in the cinema.
Oh, yeah. Freddy's Dead.
Freddy's Dead.
Yeah,
and it was the last 15 minutes or so.
Yes.
Where they said, we're entering Freddy's world, you have to put your glasses on.
Yes.
And people would point at you and things like that. And so I was young enough to remember those kind of things, but they were fairly decent. The 3D in this is appalling.
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, again, this is the problem with those movies, that now we have to watch them in 2D.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious that everything was shot for 3D. So you just have random scenes where things are just coming at you, just like really mundane things. Or in the case of this movie, you have that kind of really bad kind of kind of computer generated severed arm that comes towards the camera.
But did you the moment where Dennis Quaid's using a crossbow?
Yes.
Do you remember? And it's being pulled by a wire that you can see, so it comes towards the screen. I mean, and any time you see the shark in 3D, in order to make it work, it is so slow. This is the problem. What they've done in this film is they've made the fastest sea predator known alive to be the slow. They've turned him into Jason, basically, the slowest possible sea creature that you might have a chance of outswimming.
Yeah. That amazing moment when it goes towards the glass and breaks through the glass. Again, it just looks like it was animated on a kind of Commodore 64 or something, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing, I think, to be positive about this film is you can see the genesis of, specifically, Deep Blue Sea without question.
Definitely.
And other shark films. Jaws 3 really has given a lot of inspiration for what has come afterwards.
Yes. Kind of putting a shark in a kind of like man-made claustrophobic space, right? Rather than just out in the ocean.
Absolutely, because if you're not going into the ocean, you'll never encounter shark. But if you go to the theme park, you might well encounter the shark. So I think the problem is that you can see everything. The foam shark. You can see the foam in the shark.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not great. It's really not great.
I did really love the moment when one of the characters just gets trapped inside the mouth of the shark.
No, that was
He's
cool.
the one with the grenade, and we just get a really long shot from just inside the shark's mouth as it's kind of chomping, trying to get him, right?
That was incredible. I think it's Simon McCorkadale who played Manimal, I think. I think he played Manimal.
Yeah.
I think he played Manimal. So
amazing.
you've got people playing things quite realistically, and then you've got Simon McCorkindale and his pal, who may be from either, we don't know, the East End of London or South Africa. His accent, we're not sure.
Yeah.
He turns up in full Roger Moore safari suit.
Yep.
I think he's a filmmaker. It's not clear. He's a filmmaker who also has ideas on how to kill the shark as well.
Yes.
So, at one point, their idea, we should reel it back. They catch a shark.
Oh, but it's a baby one or something.
Right, but no one notices that it's a tiny shark. Right? So they catch a shark, which they think is the shark. And the scientist girlfriend wants to help it and study it and everything else. And what happens is they decide to make money off it and move it to a small pool.
Yes.
And the shark, which I don't know about you, Mike, was quite obviously plastic.
Well, there was a very long static shot of just the character stood around chatting with this plastic thing just floating. Yeah.
But again, pretty much the scene in Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah.
Where they do it. By the way, Deep Blue Sea is my favourite shark film.
Fantastic film. 25 years old this year, Susan, can you believe?
Absolutely love it. Will not hear a word against Deep Blue Sea. I think it's absolutely extraordinary. Anyway.
It's incredible. Yeah.
So, the baby shark's dead. And again, because as we've established now scientifically, sharks are both psychic and have feelings, and the mum is also there and is now absolutely furious.
Yeah.
Because she knows the baby shark is dead.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So the moment of triumph of catching the little shark's gone, there's a big shark. And the big shark, absolutely furious, it just... You know when you're, obviously not myself because I'm very well behaved, drunk, furious, smashing stuff. That's what this shark is doing.
That's what the shark's doing.
Do you know what I mean? Because the Undersea Kingdom, which is this network of tunnels, it's trying to smash that. It's trying to smash everything. So Simon McCorkindale, safari suit wearing, expert in we don't know what. Their idea, if I got this right, is to suffocate the shark. Let's suffocate it by luring it into a ventilation tunnel and switching off the fans. I'm not an expert, but I think there's a better way of killing a shark. Anyway.
It's incredible.
So he swims in. This is where, again, Jaws 3 has turned nature's most incredible predator into a fool. He swims in, and literally the shark shuffles forward like it's in the queue at a post office. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
The shark goes, all right, I'll go in here then. Do. And this is the moment where the shark eats Simon McCorkindale. Now, that is a great sequence.
That's great.
Because I did not expect to see the POV in the shark's stomach.
It was great. And was he still alive? Like, he hadn't actually been chomped yet, I think, right?
Well,
it was almost like the whale mouth in Pinocchio or something, that, like, he was still just alive in there. I'm going to ask you a question. Yeah.
The grand finale of Jaws 3.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I know what you're going to say. Yeah, go on.
So, they're underwater. The shark's there. The shark has stuck its head through something. A hand appears.
With a grenade.
So
we should say that this character, when he had a grenade in his hand at the time when he was eaten, right? But he wasn't able to pull out the pin and kill the shark.
Couldn't pull out the pin.
Yeah.
Do you believe... There's two possibilities. Simon McCorkindale is still alive and has thrust his hand out with the grenade.
Yeah.
Or, much like the Heimlich maneuver, the shark, in attempting to squeeze through the window, has pressed its own stomach
and has coughed
forcing the body out.
Do you know, both those explanations are better than what I thought, which was just... Has he just had that arm hanging out of his mouth the whole time? Like, we've seen him... It's like you're eating a McDonald's chip and you forget for a whole day that there's one still just hanging out of your mouth. It was like he's eaten people since then as well. So I didn't understand that. Yeah. Incredible. I like that idea that maybe squeezing through a small gap has just like he's regurgitated up this guy's arm.
Yeah, because it's very clear that he's not chewed. It must be like eating an oyster. It's just all down in one. That's gone straight down. But I have to say that was the moment at which me and the missus... That's where I thought she was going to lose her mind.
Yes.
When an arm appeared with a grenade.
It's so good. Chekhov's arm and grenade.
They finagled the pin out.
Yep.
And the shark blew up.
I love it. I love it.
You know,
And again, the worst like 3D effect you've ever seen of the shark blowing up as well. It's
appalling.
Incredible.
Appalling. In between times, I mean, we don't even have time. Mike sent me a hilarious email yesterday saying we'll talk about these films for about 15 minutes each. Oh,
Yeah.
Do you think so? I've got 6 hours to talk about these. Lots of things happen in between. They're trying to patch things. There's one point where Mike, the shark, jumps out and Mike says, "What was that?" And you think, but you've been terrorised by a shark before you know it's a shark, Mike. Why are you asking?
So funny.
What was that?
Yeah, Mike, you know the deal,
Yes.
right? Again, this is where it's weird. It's like Mike and Sean in this movie are a completely different Mike and Sean to the other movies,
Completely
right?
different.
It's really weird. Why do they even bother calling them Mike and Sean Brody? They could have just been different characters, I think.
Absolutely.
In this movie, you know?
The only point of this is to cash in on Jaws and Jaws 2.
Yeah.
Because they aren't really, apart from Sean, when he first appears, having a bit of a fear of the water, which he quickly gets over when Leah Thompson takes her top off.
Yeah,
He's in there, no problem at all.
Yes,
That's really the only indication that there's any problem with the water.
Absolutely. Because again, Mike working at SeaWorld as a maintenance guy and also being in a relationship with marine biologist, I don't know, but I just feel like would he have done that, this guy that's had 2 pretty horrific things happen to his family involving sharks, you know? It's like,
the thing is, there is no exploration. So that event in Jaws 2 was deeply traumatic.
Yes.
His brother almost died, he almost died. Deeply traumatic. Marge, R.I.P.
R.I.P. Marge, yeah.
Died. No one seems to care about Marge.
No.
I feel deeply upset about that. But there's really no through line apart from the names.
No.
Because he doesn't have any inside knowledge about the sharks. He's not. There's no. Because
nothing.
he's not the marine biologist. He's the engineer.
Yeah.
But it's an odd one because I do think Dennis Quaid very passable.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's fine. You know, very watchable.
Simon McCorkindale's pal again. Really, he's eaten shark's mouth. The pal, the South African Cockney, he loses his mind.
Yeah, oh my God, he does.
I don't know if they were meant to be in a relationship. I don't know if they loved each other.
Yeah.
I like to think they were in love, but because of the time, they couldn't declare it for each other.
I like that. Yeah.
Because he really loses his mind.
Really
about things.
odd.
And then, of course, while 5 people may die, hundreds of people are traumatised by being trapped underwater in the undersea kingdom.
Now that, I wish there had been more of that. Like, I liked the sequence where you see the girls walking through the tunnel and you've got the skeletons and the tentacles coming out, and then they see the corpse on the other side of the glass. Like, I could have done with more of that kind of fun ghost train ride type stuff, you know?
I think they could have made more of the undersea kingdom, but they couldn't because the effects were terrible. But that is a terrifying idea. That's terrifying. But instead, there was a great deal of time spent on, as I've said, the acrobatic water skiing.
Yes.
You know, and you've got Calvin Bouchard saying, "This is my favourite bit." And you think, you're running a SeaWorld. This is deeply odd.
Mad. And also the most hilarious, sudden, cheesy ending where they blow up the shark, bad CGI effect bad 3D effect as the grenade goes off. Suddenly, boom, up on the surface of the water, it's daylight. Dolphins come up, do a little performance, and then credits roll, essentially, and they all lived happily ever after.
No, I mean, you're underselling that, Mike, because one of the dolphins survived, and we don't know if the other one did. Was it Sandy and something?
Yeah.
One of them's there. Where's the other one? Because the dolphins save the humans.
Of course. Yeah,
Right?
of course. Yeah.
Are they alive? Are they dead? My wife's in tears at this point because she actually cares about the dolphin. Where are they? Where are they? And then the dolphin comes up, and in one of the greatest shots in cinema history, you've got Dennis Quaid and his girlfriend in the water, and then overlaid on top of that, they're not even there at the same time.
No.
2 spinning dolphins.
2 spinning dolphins.
The end.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Credits roll. Bad kind of 3D credits coming at you in red as well. You know,
Wonderful.
Love it.
So, and I know this won the Golden Raspberry, or it was nominated, wasn't it?
Nominated
for the Golden Raspberry.
Yeah.
It deserved it. I mean, look, the problem with this is Jaws the Revenge, which we're about to talk about, I will defend to the death, is a great deal of fun.
Excellent. Okay, I'm looking forward to this.
I do not think this is as much fun as it could have been.
Well, it absolutely is not as much fun as it could have been, but I will say, for me, it was infinitely more fun than 4. We'll get to this. I found 4 just unbelievably boring. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. And I think, yeah, the thing about 3 is that it looks so bad, I think, and
that is the problem. It's tough to get past how bad it looks.
It's not well directed. It was directed by this guy, Joe Alves, who I looked him up. He was a second unit director on the first Jaws movie, and this was his first and last director credit. He has a single director credit, and it's this movie, so he never directed again after this movie, which is interesting. But yeah, it's I think it's technically the worst Jaws film of the 4, right? By a long way.
But the thing is, you can forgive so much if it's a watchable film.
Yeah.
Right? And the problem for me is, and again, I was watching it Amazon Prime on my big telly.
Yeah.
So maybe that caused problems.
Yeah.
But I just didn't care about anybody.
Yeah.
But I really cared about the shark.
Yeah.
Because, I get it. They displayed your child. The child is dead. Of course you're angry. I absolutely get it. I get it, love.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So I think the film has succeeded in putting my sympathies in perhaps the place they didn't intend to.
Well, I love it. And also I love this idea that all of these movies have these kind of like revenge plots involving the sharks.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, 2, 3 and 4 actually have a big bit of DNA.
Yeah.
Which is essentially... Now, great white sharks travel quite long distances, I understand, but this one family... This is the family.
Yeah. We've been from New England to SeaWorld in, I guess, Florida, is it?
Yes.
And then in a minute we're going to be in the Caribbean, incredible.
Yeah. This is the one. And what you have to actually ask yourself is, what is so special about the Brody family?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chief Brody killed a shark. Mm-hmm. But really... Do you know what I mean? Humans have been killing sharks for years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But this shark and this family...
Oh, it's incredible.
It's one of those sliding doors moments, I suppose, isn't it? It could be a rom-com.
If things had gone differently.
It could be a rom-com.
I know. They're obsessed with each other,
That's what it is. Just get a room, work out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, there you go. Jaws 3D, like we said, not well received compared to part 2, was nominated for Golden Raspberries, critically panned, all of that kind of thing. But we get one more attempt to bring the Jaws franchise back
we do.
In 1987 with Jaws: The Revenge.
Instinctively, man has always been drawn to the sea. Its beauty, its mystery, its secrets. But there is also a vague uncertainty, a sense of intrusion into an alien world, where man is unwelcome and completely at the mercy of the most terrifying predator on Earth. Man's deepest fear has risen again. Jaws, the Revenge. This time, it's personal.
Truly one of the greatest films of all time. See, do you know what I admire? Is instead of just, maybe the shark knows. The shark knows.
It knows. The tagline for this one, this time it's personal.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you know what I mean? Just go for it. Do you know what I don't like? Is I don't like kind of, should we do this? Let's just do it. Right?
Yeah.
In terms of Jaws: The Revenge, I don't think they think Jaws 3 happened.
Absolutely. I think you could watch 1, 2 and 4 as a trilogy almost, right? Yeah.
So forget what we just said about Jaws 3. It doesn't matter. Right? None of it happened.
None of it happened.
Okay.
Sean is not a cowboy from Texas anymore.
Sean is
that's
now
not a thing.
Sean is now 18 again.
Yes.
Right? So Jaws 3 hasn't happened. So we're back in Amity again. And what I love about this film is it's a Christmas film. This should be on your list with Die Hard, Gremlins and all the others. This is a Christmas film. It's Christmas in Amity. Sean is followed in his father's footsteps and is in the police department. He's engaged. His mother's there. So Ellen Brody's back. Yay! It's what we've all been waiting for.
I know, thank God.
Of all the characters I wanted to come back, it was her. So, and this is where it really starts to be, I believe, one of the greatest films of all time. So, it's nearly Christmas. On the shore, the people of Amity are singing the first Noel. There's a horse dressed as a camel. Right? It's amazing. It's beautiful. If you look in the background, I'm sure it's a horse that they've disguised as a camel.
Yeah.
Children are singing. Beautiful. Sean's gone out in the boat because there's something stuck in one of the markers. Okay. And this is where you just really have to get into it. You have to forget anything you've ever learned about life, sharks, right? Because what the shark has done, if I understand this correctly, is the shark who wants this family, right, has, without any arms, finagled a piece of wood into the marker to tempt out Sean Brody and kill him.
Incredible.
Now, in my view, this first killing is actually quite shocking.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So, unlike Jaws 3, this first kill I thought was really effective.
Well, this movie, 5 minutes in, you're like, wow, this movie's not fucking around. Okay, they've just savagely killed off the youngest member of the Brody family. Okay, yeah.
So, this shark, you have to understand, has a purpose.
Yes.
And the purpose is to destroy the Brody family, but only in a specific order. Because later on, he could well have killed the granddaughter, but doesn't, because he wants Mike. So the shark not only wants to kill them, but in a specific order, which I enjoy immensely. So, one issue that I will admit this film has is a slight emotional schizophrenia. If you look at the timeline of Jaws the Revenge, it actually happens over the period of about 7 or 8 days.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're just before Christmas, they go to the Bahamas, it's Christmas, it's New Year, then it finishes. I mean, this is a short period of time.
Yeah.
But people go, I mean, especially, God bless her, Ellen Brody.
I mean, I know everyone grieves in their own way, but yeah, Ellen is all over the place in this movie, emotionally.
She goes to screaming to saying, I'm going to make fettuccine. I mean, it's extraordinary. And what I would say is I will defend the actress because she is given a difficult hand.
Absolutely.
She's having to convey a number of emotions here. And I don't even think Meryl Streep could have managed to do what she's being asked to do in this particular film.
And I believe she had retired from acting, this actress, and they kind of brought her out of retirement for this film. So God bless her. I think she does a great job,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with her in the slightest. So anyway, Mike arrives from the Bahamas. He's now a very bearded man with a wife and a daughter.
Yes.
There's a little bit of crying. There's a very odd funeral. Very well attended funeral, though. He was obviously very popular, Sean.
Yes.
Very well attended.
Yeah.
Ellen has a bit of a laugh halfway through. I thought that was slightly inappropriate, but she was remembering happy memories.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a typical American movie funeral where Mrs. Brody is standing well apart from the rest of her family.
Yeah.
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 And Mike says, why don't you come to the Bahamas? It's where I live. There are no sharks. Sure. And off they pop. So, and I get it. As you say, Mike, people grieve in different ways. He was thinking the best for his mother. Let's get her to the Bahamas. We'll all be together. So off she pops.
Yeah. And actually, we should say, right, that Chief Brody is dead at this point too, right?
From a heart attack.
From a heart attack.
But she says it's from fear.
She has this conspiracy theory that the sharks are out to get her and her
from
family.
The very beginning.
Yes.
Right. So we should say this. So we know the shark has deliberately done this. Ellen Brody is thinking, and I think she says it waited all this time and it came back for him. So straight away, she knows the score. Now, she's right.
She's right,
The shark hat, she is right. But much like her husband in Jaws 1 and 2, no one believes her. Everyone thinks she's gone slightly mad. But she knows. Because throughout this film, and one of the reasons I love this film, she'll stand wistfully looking out to the water while a little bit of music plays. Because she not only knows that, she's slightly psychically linked with the shark.
I was going to ask this because I was like, is this being edited in a way where it's like they are kind of aware of each other psychically, which is even funnier? Yeah.
So, as I understand it, there were a lot of difficulties with this film.
It's just the story of all of the Jaws movies,
Right.
isn't it? Yeah.
Now, there is a novelisation which explains that it's some form of voodoo curse, I think.
Oh, amazing.
Right? I think there were previous voiceovers. There were a lot of iterations to try and make it work, I think. And what they settled on in the cut I certainly saw was that there is a certain amount of psychic link between Ellen Brody and the shark.
Amazing.
Right?
Amazing.
Because a mother knows, Mike. A mother knows.
A mother knows.
A mother knows, right? It's odd because she immediately knows the shark has come back, but also knows when the shark is about. And we see that in several points during the revenge.
Yeah.
She gets it. She knows the shark's there. So they go to the Bahamas. This is where we encounter the supreme god that is Michael Caine.
Yes, who I'm sure everyone knows, right? Even people that have never seen Jaws: The Revenge will know, will have seen the Michael Caine interviews, of course, where he talks about I've never seen the film, but I've seen the house it bought.
Did it for the money. Absolute respect to him.
Oh, sure.
You know.
Absolutely.
And the thing about Michael Caine is he's performing at a 2 out of 10, but he still performs everyone else off the screen.
He really
He's
does.
superb.
He's great.
He's
in this.
superb.
He's great.
You know.
I also love that he won the Oscar that year for Best Supporting Actor for Hannah and Her Sisters, the Woody Allen film. He was unable to attend the Academy Awards and collect his award because he was too busy filming Jaws: The Revenge, which I love.
Absolutely. But you see, unlike, and I don't know, this is just my view, unlike Roy Schneider, who looks slightly pissed off,
Yes.
I think he's having a good time, Michael Caine.
Yeah, he is.
He's
Yeah.
in the Bahamas. He's in a little boat. He's
He
wearing a
knows what
jaunty
he's
hat.
making, I think,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't get from him any form of bitterness that he's doing Jaws: The Revenge. He looks like he's having a fine time about it.
Yeah.
I think this film is fun because from the first beginning, when he lets a child fly the plane,
Yes.
irresponsible, flying all over the place. Do you know what I mean? I think that's fun. It's fun.
Do you know, I think that I was really ready to find this film fun. I was like, okay, brilliant. The shark has a psychic link with Ellen and he has a personal vendetta against this family. I'm into it. Fine. Like, that's going to be silly fun. But where were the shark deaths in this? You know how we've talked about how each movie has a kind of sort of melodrama soap opera element?
Yes.
This movie felt to me like it was 90% soap opera and about 10% shark horror movie.
Yes.
I think after that initial quite shocking moment when Sean is killed at the beginning, I think the next actual shark attack death scene we see is over an hour into the movie,
Yes.
which is the woman on the banana boat, which is, again, a fun moment. But there's so much other weird sort of family drama stuff going on in between, right?
But see, the thing is, see what you've identified there, Mike, is the only flaw in the film. Which is
The only flaw.
The only flaw in the film. Which is if you have a shark with a personal vendetta with a family of 3, there's only 3 potential deaths.
Yes, this is true.
Right?
This is
so
true.
The flaw is he's only after the Brody family and there aren't very many of them left.
That's the problem.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is why the shark ignores all the other people it could be killing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
all it wants is the Brody family. But doesn't really want them. Because banana boat,
Yeah.
right? And I'm never getting on one.
Absolutely not. No.
Never. The granddaughter's on the banana boat.
Yes.
And it tries to kill the granddaughter, but doesn't really. The shark's not really. The shark could have killed the granddaughter.
Yeah.
You know, because the way I see it is, and maybe it's a feminist retelling, Mike, of Jaws: Revenge. Ellen Brody is the final girl,
Yeah.
right? The ultimate final girl in the Jaws.
Yeah.
Right? And she knows it because she's psychically linked to that shark. So I'm watching a woman's personal journey through 30 years of hell.
Yeah.
Right? Her life was fine, Mike.
Yeah.
She lived in Amity. She had a husband she loved. She had 2 children. It was sunny a lot of the time. And then he met that shark. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, Ellen Brody's life has been a living hell.
Yeah. She's
Right?
Laurie Strode, right? Like
She
after
is.
30 years of...
She is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So she's always known this is going to happen, right? She's known this.
Yeah.
That ultimately she'd have to confront this shark's friend. Right? Because what you also have to understand is that for the past 20 years, from the first Jaws to this Jaws, every shark that's met each other has told them about this family. Right?
Yeah, it's like that moment, that montage in Finding Nemo when all the fish are telling each other about, Nemo.
So, because
amazing.
what's happened is, because we're ignoring Jaws 3, Jaws 2 is 1978, nothing's actually happened to the Brody family and sharks, as far as we know, in those intervening decades.
No,
right?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I accept all that, you see. I think that's fine.
That's fine.
I think that's fine.
Yeah. And we are, we're watching Ellen work her way through this situation.
Badly.
Which in itself is quite funny.
Yes,
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of sepia-toned flashbacks in this movie as well, where they'll chuck in some footage of the original Jaws, whether it's, Brody playing with his kid at the dining table or, but what I love as well is there's a moment when Ellen, it's like she's remembering Chief Brody fighting the shark in the first one. She wasn't there for that.
No.
She didn't see it. But it's part of her flashback
Of course.
in sepia.
She has a flashback to a scene she couldn't have seen.
No.
I accept that. She's psychically linked to a shark. This is all fine. But it's true. She is feeling things very deeply that she couldn't have known what they were.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is all... You can see that they've struggled to make sense of this film.
Yes.
And they are putting in bits and pieces to try and make sense of it. Because the Ellen Brody character, so she lost her son. We don't know when she lost her husband necessarily, but she suffered a lot of grief. She's now in the Bahamas with her son, her grandson. She's flirting with Hoagie.
Mm-hmm.
She's flirting with Michael Caine. She's still distressed about her son dying. She knows the shark's there. I mean, it's a complicated scenario. It's an emotional time of year. I don't know about you, but Christmas and New Year always brings out the worst in me.
Always, Yeah.
So she's struggling anyway.
Yeah.
Although she was quite chipper at the New Year's dance.
Very chipper. Very chipper
very
after she
chipper.
kissed Michael Caine at the bar,
One of the most uncomfortable kisses in cinema history.
Really creepy. I don't know
really
what's going on there.
It wasn't good. So, the only flaw I will accept for Jaws the Revenge is not a lot of people die.
Yes.
Because of the shark. But the shark spends a lot of time. The only other flaw that I'm going to accept. The shark spends a lot of time swimming like I do when I'm doing the breaststroke and I don't want to get my hair wet. It's a lot of head up.
Yes, we haven't really talked about the shark itself in this movie and how it looks, right? But you're right, there's a lot of swimming with its head up, like it's looking around, seeing what's going on.
It also appears to tread water a lot because there's a lot of shark POVs where it swims very slowly and has a right good look around.
Yeah, just a little spin around, a little 360.
Just a wee 360.
Yeah.
So the shark spends a great deal of time with its head out of the water looking. Now, my view is... sharks are fantastically sensitive to sounds and smells and don't really need to poke their head up like a meerkat to have a good look at what's happening.
No.
One of the only other flaws I will accept is that the shark spends a lot of time not only with its head out of the water, but makes quite a lot of noise. There's quite a lot of hissing and screaming.
Yeah.
And again, not a shark expert. I don't think they growl. When they're coming out of the water. No. What
a strange film this is. And the visual effects were they're infamously bad, the shark effects, to the point where, again, it actually won the Golden Raspberry Award for worst effects of the year, this movie. There's an amazing, if you go on the Wikipedia page even, there's an amazing kind of still image of one of the frames in which the shark is being impaled, and it just looks like this little plastic toy fish. It's incredible. The movie was... not well received. Well received by you, Susan, which I'm so pleased about.
Mike, before you go any further, can I tell you?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Ellen Brody takes that boat out Do you know what I mean? She takes that boat out and she stands on that deck and she shouts, "Come and get me, you son of a bitch." Now, that is as iconic as Ripley, "Get away from her, you bitch."
Yeah.
In Aliens.
It's up there.
Now,
Most iconic lines. Yeah.
The only other flaw I'll accept in this film is that after shouting, "Come and get me, you son of a bitch," she should have jumped in the water.
If she should have.
Because what she did was she just stayed on the deck of the ship, requiring that poor shark once again to strain its neck to bite the boat.
This is the other thing, right, Ellen? If your family and if you think that there is a shark with a vendetta against you, maybe don't live in Amity Island or the Bahamas. Just go to, like, Missouri or somewhere inland. You know, you'll be fine.
What you're doing there, though, is, Mike, is you're blaming the victim. That's what you're doing there. You're blaming her.
That's true.
Why doesn't the shark move?
That's a good
point.
point.
Why does she have to move? Do you know what I mean?
It's a good point.
And
she loves the ocean. Why should she have to move from the ocean?
She bloody loves it. She bloody loves the ocean. Why should she have to move? She's probably mortgage free at her age.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to get a mortgage when you're in your 50s or 60s. I know that.
Yeah.
So maybe she can't. Maybe the state of the American economy means she can't move. Right? So
yes. Here's
the thing. I think this is the kind of film that you would discuss with your friends, and if you had a story, I've got an idea for a story. Why doesn't the shark actually hunt them down? It's Percival, and you go, it's great. We'll never make that. And someone actually made it. They actually made the film.
They did.
Where the shark. Now it's become the butt of a lot of people's jokes. I think it's not badly filmed. It's easier to watch than Jaws 3.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Actually, I will say it looks actually a nice looking film, right? It was shot on location in the Bahamas and it looks crisp and well directed and the performances are basically good, you know, and I agree. I think technically in all that regard, it's not so awful. Yeah.
I don't quite know what happened at the end.
Yeah. The endings of these movies are always very kind of abrupt and weird, aren't they? Yeah.
Mario Van Peebles made a thing, an electropulsy thing.
Yeah.
And then the shark, it blew up, didn't it? Kind of blew up the shark, right? But I'm not hugely clear on the technology involved in killing the shark.
Yes.
But the shark dies and then everyone's happy. And that's it.
That's it for Jaws forever, basically.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So
I loved it. I loved it.
I mean, I love that you loved it. That's amazing. That is
rankings: great. Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws The Revenge, Jaws 3D.
Interesting. Okay, I would go. I mean, for me, they would just be in number order. I think from best to worst. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You would put 3 above 4.
I would. I like I say, 3 was bad, but I laughed more. 4, I was bored. I was actively waiting for it to finish, you know, which was a problem for me. Yeah.
I think that's because you're not in touch with your feelings.
Yeah.
Because it's deeply... Think about what I've just said to you, Mike. This is a woman who's lived through decades of grief. Yeah. After Jaws 2, do you think Chief Brody came back? Do you know what I mean? As a man...
I mean, yes. And also what I love too is that we talk about these movies like it has been decades. It's 12 years between Jaws and Jaws 4. They are... Again, it feels like there should have been a much bigger gap between each movie than there is because the suns completely transform in every movie. It feels like we should have passed about 30 years by this point. It's been 12 years between part 1 and part 4, which is interesting.
Jaws the Revenge is the story of a damaged woman who's doing the best that she can.
Yeah.
And apart from the only flaw I'll accept, apart from the fact that I wanted her, I would fling myself into the water.
Yeah.
But I suppose what the question is, listen, we could spend hours talking about it. Would the shark be happy at that? Who does the shark blame? Who's the shark? Is the shark after her? The sons?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The only flaw I'll accept, the only other flaw I'll accept, it's not clear maybe.
Yes.
You know, who's the shark after?
Well, how does the shark... This is a silly question because there are so many questions, but how does the shark...
I'll know the answer to it.
How does the shark know who Ellen is? Ellen has...
Sniffs her, smells her.
Ellen,
the shark can smell her.
Ellen has never once been near that shark or near a shark.
Jaws 2...
Yeah.
She went out on the boat initially with the deputy to save the girl.
Okay.
She might have left a trail.
Do you know, that's fun. I mean, again, I could go along with all this. All I ask, Susan, is that I could have done with a little bit more woman pouring gasoline on herself and accidentally setting herself on fire. You know, I could have done with a bit more of that.
Look, what they did was, to sell this, they went really sincere.
Yeah,
you know that.
really sincere.
They went really sincere. And what they could have done with, look, I'll accept it, is a little bit more lightness of touch.
Yeah.
But they went absolutely, completely down the serious route.
Interesting.
But I still think... You know, I think it's comparable to a Jane Austen novel, to some of the greats. It's a woman fighting through grief and a great white shark who she is psychically linked to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you take it, it's a tale as old as time. Now, if you can't get that,
it's my own shortcomings.
That,
you know, it's
and if what you prefer is Jaws 3, that's up to you.
Yeah.
I think the deep, beautiful connection between a woman and a shark, who she's probably never met.
I am dismissing Ellen Brody's feelings here, and that's on me.
Exactly.
That is on me.
That is on you. That is on you.
And indeed, the entire critical community. This movie has 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's generally considered, but not by Susan, to be one of the worst movies ever made.
I have seen far worse than Jaws the Revenge. I have seen far worse than Jaws the Revenge.
Well, Jaws 3D, in your opinion.
Yes, Jaws 3D. And that is not the worst film I've seen by a country mile. By a country mile. Because it's watchable. That's the thing. The reason I defend it is watchable.
Yes.
Right?
And actually, I will agree with that. Like, I think that we put more pressure... It's because the first one, right? It's because the first one is such a masterpiece that these sequels have extra pressure on them, and so therefore they are received even worse than... There are many other movies made in the late 80s that horror sequels even that are worse than Jaws the Revenge.
I was so excited because I saw there was a Deep Blue Sea 2.
Yes, exactly. Right.
I paid for that. I paid my own money for that film that was far worse than Jaws the Revenge. I mean, it was appallingly bad. I thought Deep Blue Sea 2. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So I can name you hundreds of films that are worse than Jaws the Revenge. It doesn't deserve that. It doesn't deserve that in the slightest. And if you think about the questions it poses, right? This is the thing. What do you want from a sequel, Mike? I want a film that makes me think. I'm thinking, what does that shark want?
What does it want?
What does that shark want? And in that way, it's posing the big questions in life, really, isn't it?
And what was that shark's relationship to the original shark?
Well, exactly.
Or sharks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was it just a friend? Was it a friend?
Was it
though,
more than a friend?
Do you know what I mean?
You know?
Yeah, but exactly. Is it one of those friends that you feel really sorry for and you feel you have to go over and above to defend them?
Maybe it was a
know what I
mother.
mean?
I like the idea that it's about two mothers who have both lost children, right? Going head to head.
What you're talking about there, Mike, is the heart of the film. And do you know what makes me feel really good is it's only taken us 2 hours for me to finally get you.
I'm actually starting to get on board with this now. Yeah.
See, what you've done is you've superficially watched it and thought this isn't good.
Yeah.
What they're trying to do quite badly is tell a really important story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's about a woman. It's about a mother.
It's about a mother. It's about it's about mothers. Mothers and sons.
It's about mothers. That's what it's about. It's about mothers. It's about sons. It's about grief. It's about life. It's about longing. It's about sexuality. It's about passion. It's about a psychic connection with a great white shark.
Incredible.
Do you know what I mean?
Incredible.
So
yeah.
I just think people dismiss it when actually, if they really think about it, it's actually pretty bloody brilliant.
I dismissed it. I dismissed this film. I dismissed the idea of us even having anything to talk about in this film, Susan. And yet we've been going for nearly 2 hours. We've nearly talked about these for as long as we talked about Us and Parasite. So, you know.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I connected more with Jaws: The Revenge than I did with Us or Parasite. Because how many times in my life have I wanted to stand and just shout, "Come and get me then, you son of a bitch."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're all Ellen Brody.
This is
We're
amazing.
all Ellen Brody.
Tune in to Susan's next season of
you'll see me on the top deck of a cruise ship shouting, "Come and get me, you son of a bitch."
Yes.
No question.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for opening my eyes to these
Very
movies.
welcome. You're very welcome.
So glad. I'm so glad that we were here to discuss these films together. And no Jaws movie since, right? That was it for the Jaws franchise. Do you think these films, I mean, obviously we've had a zillion Jaws rip-offs since then. Do you think that Jaws itself will make a comeback at some point?
I don't see that it will, because the very first one was about, Chief Brody and, and then the rest of them were about the Brodies. And I just, when you look at what the Meg, Deep Blue Sea, all of those kind of,
Yeah.
The reason why Deep Blue Sea works so well is you've kind of got those super smart sharks, probably psychic,
yes,
who just try and kill people.
Yes.
And really that's kind of what you want. And the Meg's a lot of fun, and I don't see, shark films will not stop.
No.
And I mean, I love them, but the last time I did a touring stand-up show, I had a whole section on my love of these films.
I love that.
Because there was one called, I'm sure it was called Bait, where there was a great white shark trapped in a supermarket in Australia, I think, actually. To bring it right back to where we started, I love you, Australia. I'm terrified of you.
Yes, there we go.
So there are so many ways that shark films have gone. I actually think Jaws wouldn't succeed anymore.
No, it's almost like unless they do the whole, like they've been doing with a lot of horror franchises, let's bring it back to basics, let's bring it back to chapter one and retell this story from scratch and make it scary again, kind of thing. But again, I don't know if there's any point in doing that when everyone is so familiar with the original anyway,
What are you going to do better than Jaws?
Exactly.
Show us more of the shark? No, because that's not what you actually want. Because I think the thing that we absolutely know is these films work at their best almost when you don't see the shark.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
that's when it works best.
Although I could have done with seeing it slightly more in Jaws: The Revenge. But
right,
anyway.
now listen, what we've talked about before is it's emotional. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's emotional.
Oh, yeah. It's the emotional storyline. Yes.
So I don't think Jaws will come back. I think shark films will always continue.
Yeah.
Because, when they're good, they're really, really good. When they're bad, they're awful.
Yeah.
The shark noodles but then they're still a diverting little kind of hour of your time, aren't they?
Oh, I think that's the thing. These movies, they will. I think they will always have an audience, no matter how bad they are. Too. Look at the Sharknado films. Look at the. People will go and see these sorts of movies always. And that's really interesting. I think for whatever reason, it's the kind of animal attack movies that I think will always draw audiences in, no matter what.
But the thing is, other animal attack films haven't succeeded. It's been a long time since we've had a decent spider film.
Yeah.
It's been, but shark films for some reason seem to continue. Whereas other animal attack films, really since Cujo, you don't really have a huge amount of kind of rabid dog attacks, all of those kind of things. So there's something peculiar about shark films.
Yeah.
That from 1974... to present day continues in a way that other animal genres don't.
I love that. Well, let me finish off, Susan, by asking you, do you have a favourite in this entire kind of subgenre that we're covering this year?
I don't think anything touches the sides of, Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Yeah.
But as I say, if you've not seen Deep Blue Sea...
And I love that, because what an indication of the breadth of these sorts of movies. Picnic at Hanging Rock at one end, this kind of very kind of profound, kind of like art house almost kind of movie, and then Deep Blue Sea. Deep Blue Sea. Yeah.
But the thing is, if you want sharks, Deep Blue Sea is the film for you, because that's just sharks. That's just
it's
from
incredible.
The very beginning.
It's so good.
And of course, Jaws: The Revenge.
And of course.
I love, do you know, it's my background as a lawyer. I love nothing more than arguing the opposite of what everyone else thinks.
I love it. And you did an excellent job. I think you've convinced me. So I will go back and rewatch that film with fresh eyes next time, you know? Amazing. Well, Susan Calman, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed, darling. I'll speak to you soon.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. And one more time, massive thank you to my brilliant guest, Susan Calman. Who better to have argued the case for Jaws the Revenge than Susan Calman? Oh my God, I laughed a lot throughout that conversation. I really hope you guys enjoyed listening to that. Please do write in. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of the Jaws sequels? How would you rank them? Do you want to stick up for Jaws 3D or Jaws for the Revenge? I thought both of them were pretty awful, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Please get in touch. You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on all the socials, of course, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd. And if you want to discuss this week's episode with fellow listeners, then join the Evolution of Horror discussion group, which can be found on Facebook, or you can join the Evolution of Horror Discord. Over there, they are also hosting weekly watch-alongs every Sunday night to coincide with our Nature Bites Back series. So lots of fun movies to watch with a group every Sunday night over on the EOH Discord. This podcast is part of the Evolution of Horror network, and if you want to check out our sister podcast, The Detective and the Log Lady, a Twin Peaks rewatch podcast with Stacey Ponder, then check it out. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to support the Evolution of Horror and everything we do here and get treated to regular bonus content, then sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/Evolution of Horror. You can find the Evolution of Horror wherever you get your podcasts, and if you get a spare minute, I'd be so grateful if you could spend a moment to drop us a rating and a review, preferably a nice flattering one, please, on your podcast app of choice, as that really helps us get discovered by new listeners. So, on to next week then, and the fun and laughter continues, because next week I am joined by one of my absolute favourite people, my Detective and the Log Lady co-host, Stacey Ponder. And Stacey is a particular fan of the 70s Animal Attack movies. So what we thought we would bring you next week is a feast, an extravaganza of Nature Bites Back movies. It's going to be a kind of also-rans episode, basically focusing on the wave of Animal Attack movies that we got through the 1970s. So next week it's going to be spoiler-free, and we are going to be recommending a whole bunch of 70s Animal Attack movies, thick and fast. Everything from Frogs to Night of the Lepus to Bug to Phase 4 to Grizzly to Kingdom of the Spiders to White Dog to Deadly Eyes to The Swarm to Day of the Animals to Empire of the Ants to Q the Winged Serpent, and much, much more. It's going to be a very fun week. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.